One of the most controversial things that happened during the Jackson administration or Andrew Jackson's time as president was the Tariff of Abominations. It was caused by sectional differences and sectionalism, which we covered previously. The Northern-based Congress, which had more members from the North, wanted to create a high tariff on imported goods to help Northern factories. The Southern farmers hated it, and this divide between the North and the South continues to grow and become more and more controversial. One of the key people, John C. Calhoun, who was vice president for Jackson, eventually will quit that and go back to Congress, will push for the idea that the Southern states have what's called states' rights, or all states have states' rights, which means they can ignore national laws, and actually the states are like independent countries, and they don't have to follow the national government if they don't want to. And so they're saying, well, with states' rights, we don't really have to listen to this. The national government can't really tell South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, whoever, what they can or cannot do. So this idea of states' rights will start to be pushed to the South, and it's the idea that they don't have to necessarily follow the national government. John C. Calhoun, like I said previously, is the one that really pushed this. He published what's called the States' Rights Doctrine, which said that state power should be greater than national power. He looked at our government as being like the Articles of Confederation, where each state was like its own independent country, and they can do what they want, and that states, if they want, can nullify or reject federal law. Andrew Jackson and the Northerners, Andrew Jackson's a Southerner, but he's, of course, the face of the national government at this point as president. They disagree with that. They said, no, the national government and the federal system, the national government is greater and more powerful than the states, and the states have to follow all national or federal laws. Over this issue, John C. Calhoun will resign as vice president. He will go back to South Carolina, where he is elected to the Senate as a senator for South Carolina, where he's from, and he comes back to Congress to lead the fight for states' rights and the idea of nullifying the Tariff of Abominations, or ignoring it. There are vehement, vigorous arguments on the Congress floor over this issue. In the Hayne-Webster debate, Robert Hayne argues for the power of states' rights, while from Massachusetts, Daniel Webster said we're one nation above all the states and we need to be unified, and the national government should be in charge. In 1832, South Carolina took a bold step. They filed a law in their state called the Nullification Act. And in the Nullification Act, South Carolina declared all national tariffs null and void in South Carolina, which means that in South Carolina they would not follow national tariffs. They threatened to leave the country if they're forced to follow these laws, and they even formed their own army. So we are right on the edge of possible civil war here in 1832, where a southern state is threatening to leave the country, and we're not sure if the country is going to allow them to leave or not, and we're going to see what happens. This is the southern point of view, the South Carolina point of view of this. They felt like Andrew Jackson was acting like a king. He was abusing them, and he was trying to prevent them from having the freedoms that they should enjoy in their state. Jackson, of course, is a very hard-headed individual, a very angry individual at times. He is enraged. He said he will enforce the law, that South Carolina must follow the Nullification Act, and they must be obedient to the national government, and he will use the army if needed. So now South Carolina has an army. Andrew Jackson has the national army ready to march on South Carolina. We are right on the edge of civil war. Luckily, Henry Clay steps in. I like to say he steps in, and Henry Clay saves the day. He steps in, saves the situation, and forms a compromise where everyone can save face. He sits both parties down, and he says, you know what, South Carolina, you follow the tariff. You do what you're supposed to do. You be obedient. But over time, the national government will lower the tariff until it goes away. This avoids a horrible crisis and a possible civil war in our country. So we have to give Henry Clay who's known as the Great Compromiser, a lot of credit for forming this important compromise between the national government led by Andrew Jackson and the state of South Carolina led by John C. Calhoun, and prevents South Carolina from trying to leave the Union and keeps our country unified for now. But you can see civil war is right on the horizon as the debate over states' rights and slaves' rights and who has the power and control in our government will not go away.